The morning sun washed over the sprawling Grant estate in Charleston, South Carolina, turning the stone driveway golden. Birds chirped softly around the magnolia trees, but the center of attention was the sleek, midnight black, 1969 Chevrolet Camaro SS resting, stubbornly silent in the middle of the drive. Richard Grant, billionaire, automotive CEO, and one of the most intimidating men in the state, stood beside it with a scowl carved into his stern face. His daughter, Lena Grant, watched from a few steps away, arms folded, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She had begged him not to turn this into a spectacle, but Richard never listened when vengeance or pride were involved. When a dusty pickup finally rolled through the estate gates and a quiet young mechanic stepped out, no one was prepared for how this day would unfold. Cole Walker, 27, slim but strong, approached with a calm stride, toolbox in hand. His faded work shirt, slightly frayed collar, and grease-stained jeans looked painfully out of place among the immaculate luxury. Richard eyed him like he was evaluating a broken component. "You're the specialist they sent?" he asked, disbelief dripping from every word. Cole nodded politely. "Yes, sir. I appreciate the opportunity." Lena's gaze softened instantly. There was sincerity in his voice. She rarely heard among the wealthy men her father preferred. Richard circled the Camaro, frustration building. "This car refuses to start," he said stiffly. "Embarrassed me in front of investors last night. Fix it." And he paused dramatically. "I'll let you take my daughter on one date." The words hit like a lightning bolt. Lena straightened, stunned. "Dad, what are you doing?" she demanded, but Richard waved her off. "It's harmless incentive," he declared. "Motivation?" Cole blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "A date with the heiress of the Grant Empire." He hadn't come here for foolish bets or wealthy games. He'd come because the repair company he worked for assigned him the job, and refusing wasn't an option. "Sir," Cole said carefully, "I'm here to fix the Camaro, not to chase rewards." His forehead warmed with discomfort. He respected customers, but he wasn't for sale. Lena stared at him. Riley stared. Cole's answer was the first genuine thing she'd heard in a long time. Richard's smirk faltered for a split second. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone in a cheap uniform. "We'll see," he grumbled before stepping back. Cole crouched beside the Camaro, running his hands gently along the frame, listening to the subtle click of metal cooling. He popped the hood, revealing a pristine but clearly troubled engine. Lena slowly moved closer, curiosity overtaking irritation. "You didn't have to say that," she murmured. Cole glanced up briefly. "I wasn't raised to treat people like prizes," he said softly, brushing dust from a wire harness. Her breath caught at his words, unexpected, simple, and real. She'd met engineers with degrees from MIT who treated her like an obstacle, but never someone humble enough to speak truth without fear. Cole worked with smooth, deliberate motions, every twist of a wrench, every thoughtful pause revealing a lifetime of learning through experience rather than luxury. Lena watched in growing admiration. She'd spent years studying engines in classrooms, but Cole diagnosed the Camaro like it was speaking directly to him. He checked the ignition coil, the starter relay, the voltage regulator, each step purposeful. Richard hovered nearby, impatience rising. "Well," he barked. Cole didn't respond right away. He traced a hand along the fuse box, eyes narrowing. "You've got a blown fusible link, sir," he finally said. "It's small, easy to overlook, but it shuts everything down." Richard stiffened. His team of elite technicians had missed that. He didn't like being impressed. Lena crouched beside Cole, watching as he replaced the delicate wire with practiced ease. "You're good at this," she whispered. Cole shrugged modestly. "Just a lifetime of fixing broken things," he replied. "Cars don't judge you. They just need you to listen." Something inside Lena warmed, unexpected and unfamiliar. She had grown up around people who bragged about connections, money, prestige. Cole talked about listening, about understanding, about respect. As he lowered the hood and wiped his hands, Cole gave her a small, sincere smile that made her heartbeat stutter. He wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to impress. He was simply himself. Cole slid into the driver's seat, turned the ignition, and the Camaro roared to life, smooth, deep, powerful. Richard's eyes widened, despite himself. The sound echoed across the entire estate, strong and commanding, like the engine had been reborn. Lena grinned in awe, her excitement genuine. Cole stepped out, closing the door with a gentle click. "She's all yours again," he said. Richard opened his mouth, ready to congratulate himself for hiring the right man, then remembered the challenge he had issued. Lena stiffened, bracing for humiliation. Cole raised both hands politely. "Mr. Grant," he said firmly, "I don't want a date as payment. Your daughter deserves better than being part of a bargain." Silence fell so heavy that even the birds stopped chirping. Lena's breath caught in her throat, emotions storming inside her. No one had ever defended her dignity in front of her father, not friends, not suitors, not colleagues. But Cole, a simple mechanic, had. Richard's expression hardened, but behind the irritation, something grudgingly respectful simmered. He wasn't used to men turning down deals involving his wealth or influence, and certainly not his daughter. Cole picked up his toolbox, ready to leave. He was humble, respectful, and steady. but also one of the rare few who refused to bend under the weight of power, and that single act of integrity sparked something. In all three of them, something none of them fully understood yet. Cole wiped the sweat from his brow as he leaned over the Camaro's engine bay. The late morning Charleston heat, settling on his shoulders like a heavy coat. The Grant estate was quiet except for the faint rustle of leaves and the metallic clicks of Cole's tools. He worked with calm focus, his movements steady and practiced, as if he'd spent his whole life speaking the language of engines. Richard Grant watched with a mix of impatience and curiosity, arms crossed, foot tapping. Lena, on the other hand, stood a few feet away, hands fiddling, eyes studying not the engine but the man fixing it. Cole didn't notice. He was too busy diagnosing the problem, tracing wires, checking connections, and listening to the subtle whispers only true mechanics could interpret. Nothing about him felt rushed or unsure. He worked like someone who respected every machine he touched, no matter who owned it. Lena took a slow step closer, intrigued by the way Cole handled each tool with quiet confidence. "So," she began, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "You seriously don't want the date offer?" Cole lifted his head, surprised by her question, then let out a soft laugh. "It's not that," he said, voice warm and steady. "I just don't think people should be used as incentives. A date should be something that people choose, not something you win." His sincerity hit Lena harder than the summer heat. She had grown up in a world where people always said yes to her father, yes to money, yes to influence, but Cole's tone wasn't rebellious. It was respectful, firm, honest. She suddenly wished her father had never made that ridiculous offer, and at the same time, she was oddly glad Cole heard it, because it showed who he really was. Meanwhile, Richard shifted with irritation. "We're wasting sunlight," he said sharply. "Can you fix it or not?" Cole didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned back under the hood, tracing the wiring system with deliberate attention. "I can fix it," he replied, "but I need time to do it right. This car deserves more than guesswork." His words weren't meant to impress. They were simply the truth. That truth unsettled Richard. He was used to mechanics who rushed, who bragged, who promised miracles. Cole did none of that. He simply worked, carefully, respectfully, and for the first time, Richard wondered if perhaps this humble young man knew more than the high-priced restoration teams he had hired last year. Lena exchanged a small glance with Cole, secretly amused by how much her father disliked being humbled. After nearly 40 minutes of patient inspection, Cole finally paused, his eyes narrowing at a compact black component tucked just behind the distributor. He leaned in, tugged lightly at a wire, and frowned. "There's your culprit," he murmured. He motioned for Lena to come closer. "See this?" She leaned beside him, amazed he included her instead of showing off for her father. "This ignition module isn't stock," Cole explained, tapping it gently. "Looks like someone replaced it with an aftermarket OneGood brand, but whoever installed it didn't ground it properly. That caused heat buildup and made the module fail." Lena blinked, stunned by how clearly he explained it. Richard stepped forward, baffled. "But the best restoration team in the state worked on this car." Cole offered a polite shrug. "Even the best can make mistakes. Sir, cars don't care about money, they only care about precision." Cole grabbed a small grounding strap from his toolbox, along with a few custom tools he had made himself from scrap metal. Lena watched with growing admiration as he fabricated a clean, temporary fix with the kind of steady hands one gets only from years of hard, honest work. He secured the wiring, double-checked the coil output, then tightened the final bolt with a measured twist. When he looked up, his forehead was streaked with grease and determination, but his eyes shone with quiet satisfaction. "All right," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. Moment of truth. Richard and Lena exchanged a tense glance as Cole walked to the driver's seat. He turned the key. The Camaro didn't sputter, didn't hesitate, didn't groan. It roared to life with a deep, throaty growl that rolled across the estate like thunder, powerful, alive, unmistakably correct. Richard's jaw dropped open, eyes wide with disbelief. "That's impossible," he muttered. "They told me the problem was internal. They said I needed a full teardown." Cole stepped out, closing the door gently. "You don't," he said simply. "It just needed someone to really look." Lena couldn't stop smiling, her heart swelling with admiration and something else, something warmer, unfamiliar, magnetic. She watched Cole wipe his hands again. Not proud, not boastful, just grateful the Camaro was running the way it deserved. Richard approached the car, still stunned. "You fixed it," he whispered, like it was a miracle. Cole nodded. "Yes, sir. Your car is good to go." No arrogance, no ego, just a man stating a fact. The simplicity of it made the moment even more powerful. Lena's smile softened into something more vulnerable as she stepped closer to Cole. "Thank you," she said quietly, meeting his eyes. "Not just for fixing the Camaro, but for being honest." Cole shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "I'm just doing my job." But Lena could see it. He didn't just fix cars. He respected them, and that respect made him different from anyone she had ever met. Richard cleared his throat, trying to recover his authority. "Well, Mr. Walker, clearly you know what you're doing." Cole nodded respectfully. "I try my best." But Richard wasn't finished. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he studied the young man who had just humbled his pride and revived his prized Camaro. This wasn't just a mechanic. This was someone with rare talent. And for the first time, Richard Grant, the man who judged people by resumes and bank accounts, felt something unexpected. Respect. Lena saw the shift in her father's expression. She also saw the quiet tension in Cole's shoulders, the humility he carried like a second skin dot as the engine purred steadily. Cole packed his tools with deliberate care, prepared to leave. He didn't expect praise. He didn't expect gratitude. Certainly not anything else. To him, it was just a job one he was honored to do. But Lena wasn't ready for him to walk away. Not yet. Something about him, a groundedness, a sincerity had begun to pull at her like gravity, and for the first time in years, she felt the spark of something real, something her father's wealth could never buy. Richard marched toward Cole with the same thunderous authority he used in boardrooms, his polished shoes kicking dust from the floor of the garage. Lena stood still, her breath caught somewhere between hope and dread. The air trembled with tension as the CEO extended his hand. "A deal is a deal," he declared. "Take my daughter out." It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order wrapped in pride. But Cole didn't flinch. He lifted both palms in a calm refusal that instantly froze the entire room. "With all due respect, sir," he said, voice steady, "I won't date someone because of a challenge." Silence cracked like lightning. Mechanics stared. The CEO blinked hard. Lena's heart thudded in her chest. No one, absolutely no one, told her father no. Cole's words hung in the air, and Lena felt a strange mix of pride and fear. Her father's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Cole slowly wiped his hands on a rag, the grease smearing like war paint, humble, honest, unpretentious. Then he turned toward Lena, and everything about him softened. His gaze wasn't confident or cocky, it was sincere, almost hesitant. "But," he began quietly, and Lena's breath trembled, "if you want to grab coffee sometime, not as a reward, not because of a bet, just two people getting to know each other." The world seemed to pause, waiting for her answer. Lena swallowed, her heart swelling at the respect in his voice. For the first time in her adult life, the choice was entirely hers, in it, influenced by her father, expectations, wealth, or pressure. She stepped closer, taking in the man who had outsmarted her father's impossible yacht engine, who treated her with dignity instead of awe. "I'd like that," she whispered, feeling warmth bloom in her chest. "Very much." Richard blinked rapidly. Surprised? No. Stunned at his daughter, who'd once rejected men worth billions, seemed moved by a simple mechanic in dusty boots and calloused hands. It wasn't the outcome he expected. It wasn't even close. Richard cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the moment, but all his power seemed strangely useless. He'd built empires, crushed competitors, bought companies before breakfast, but he couldn't command his daughter's heart. "Well, good," he muttered, though it came out awkwardly, almost begrudgingly. Cole nodded politely, then glanced back at the massive yacht engine he'd resurrected. "Sir," he added, "if you ever need service again, bring it in. But maybe next time without the dare." The mechanics chuckled nervously, unsure if they were allowed to laugh. Richard's stern face twitched then, unexpectedly. He let out a short, stiff breath that almost resembled a laugh. When Richard stepped out to take a call, Lena found herself standing alone with Cole, and the garage seemed suddenly quieter. A soft, golden light filtered through the open bay door, dust particles floating like tiny sparks in the air. Cole scratched the back of his neck, suddenly shy. "I wasn't trying to embarrass him," he said. "I just don't want to be someone's prize." Lena nodded, her eyes gentle. "I know, and that's exactly why I said yes." She reached for a nearby stool, sitting down as if she weren't a billionaire heiress in heels, but just a girl talking to someone who made her heart soften. Cole leaned against his workbench, arms crossed but relaxed, his nervousness almost adorable. The tension between them warmed into something easy and real. "So," Lena asked with a small smile, "are you always this stubborn?" Cole chuckled. "Only when someone tries to force me into something." Then his voice lowered, and the sincerity in it made her chest tighten. "But I'm not stubborn about you." Lena wished she could hide how hard that line hit her. Growing up in privilege, she'd been admired, envied, judged, but she couldn't remember when someone had looked at her without expecting something in return. Cole didn't want her father's money or influence. He hadn't chased her. He didn't even seem impressed by her status. And for once, that felt like the greatest gift. Outside, Richard paced beside his car, but his eyes kept drifting toward them through the window. He wasn't angry, he was baffled. Lena had always been strong, independent, nearly impossible to impress, but watching her now, he saw something new, something peaceful, something happy. For years he had tried to choose the right kind of man for her, powerful, wealthy, but none of them ever made her glow like she did now while speaking with a mechanic, whose entire net worth was probably the cost of her shoes. Richard exhaled slowly. Maybe he had been looking at this all wrong. When the conversation between Cole and Lena eased into comfortable silence, she stood and brushed imaginary dust from her dress. "So, coffee," she said with a playful tilt of her head. Cole nodded. smiling for the first time without hesitation. Coffee. Lena's smile widened. Tomorrow. Cole raised a brow. Why not today? The boldness made her laugh softly. All right, today. They walked out together, the garage door closing behind them as if sealing the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Unexpected, beautifully ordinary. Richard stood waiting outside, arms crossed but expression unreadable. Lena braced herself, expecting resistance. Instead, he looked at Cole with something that resembled reluctant respect. She's my only child, Richard said firmly, and she deserves someone who treats her like a human being, not a trophy. Cole nodded, meeting his gaze without fear. I agree. The CEO's eyes softened just barely. Good. Then, after a pause, Richard added, bring her back before midnight. Lena's eyes widened. Richard shrugged. What? I'm still your father. Cole laughed, and the tension finally dissolved. As Cole opened the truck door for her, Lena climbed in, her heart fluttering with anticipation. This wasn't a date born from a dare. It wasn't a forced obligation. It was a beginning, simple, unexpected, and real. When Cole climbed in beside her and started the engine, she glanced at him, studying the quiet confidence on his face, grease on his knuckles, sunburn on his neck, no fancy suit, no expensive cologne, just authenticity. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe. They drove down the quiet road, leaving the yacht, the challenge, and her father's expectations behind. What awaited them wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, it was just a people discovering something rare, something honest, something that neither money nor status could manufacture. Lena leaned her head back, letting the warm air from the open window brush against her hair. Cole glanced over, a small smile forming, and at that moment, everything felt right. Not perfect, not planned, but right. The morning sun spilled over the quiet streets of Cole's small North Carolina town, warming the cracked pavement outside his old, dependable garage. Inside, the faint hum of an air compressor echoed through the open bay, mixing with the scent of motor oil, rubber, and the slight sweetness of the blueberry muffin he hadn't finished. Cole wiped his hands on a rag, mentally preparing to take apart a stubborn alternator, when the familiar squeak of the front door hinges broke the silence. He looked up and froze. Standing there, framed by the sunlight like a scene from a movie, was Lena. No designer dress, no corporate armor, just jeans, a soft cream blouse, and 2 steaming cups of coffee trembling slightly in her hands. Her smile was nervous, almost shy, completely different from the confident billionaire's daughter he'd met during the Camaro challenge. You actually came? Cole asked, stunned. Lena stepped inside, trying not to look terrified. I said yes because I wanted to, she said gently, not because of my father, and definitely not because of the Camaro. Cole blinked, unable to hide his own small smile. He took one of the coffees, fingers brushing hers, briefly sending a quiet jolt through both of them. He motioned toward the shop stool, and Lena sat, crossing her legs carefully, as if unsure where she fit in this humble little world. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said. Only thing you're interrupting, Cole replied, is a battle with a very stubborn alternator. Trust me, you're doing me a favor. She laughed softly, and the sound filled the entire shop. For a moment, neither spoke. There was no challenge, no rules, no deal, just a mechanic and a young woman too, lives from opposite worlds, sharing the same quiet morning. Cole leaned against the workbench. So, what brings you here? This isn't exactly billionaire territory. Well, Lena teased, I figured if you didn't want to date because my father said so, the least I could do was show up because I wanted to. He grinned. Coffee is definitely a good start. They talked slowly at first, cautiously navigating the unfamiliar space between them. Lena told him about her childhood in corporate boardrooms, raised by a father who believed pressure built excellence. Cole shared stories about growing up in a tiny town where everyone knew everyone, where he learned to fix engines before he learned to ride a bike. Hours seemed to pass without either noticing. Lena found herself leaning forward, chin resting in her palm, mesmerized by the way Cole spoke about life. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, he wasn't rehearsing lines. He wasn't calculating what she might want to hear. He was just, Cole, you ever think about leaving here? She asked seriously, opening a bigger shop, expanding. Cole shrugged. Sometimes, but this place, it's my home. My dad built this garage with his bare hands. He always said a man doesn't need a big life, just an honest one. Her chest tightened. That's beautiful. And you? He asked. You ever think about stepping away from the corporate world? Lena sighed, twirling the coffee cup between her fingers. All the time, but I never could. My father expects perfection. My decisions, they always felt like they belonged to him. Cole studied her for a moment, truly studied her. You know, he said quietly, your father might control a lot of things, but he doesn't decide your value. You do. Lena froze. No one had ever said that to her, not friends, not advisors, certainly not her father. Everyone treated her like a piece on a billionaire's chessboard, a successor, an asset, a symbol, but Cole, he saw her differently. Her throat tightened. Thank you, she whispered. I don't think you know how much that means. He gave a small smile. You deserve to hear it. Silence filled the space again, but this time it was warm like wrapping yourself in a soft blanket after years of standing in the cold. They spent the rest of the afternoon walking around town. Cole showed her the diner where he always bought his Friday pancakes. The old train station locals insisted was haunted. The lakeside pier where he used to skip stones as a kid. Lena marveled at how peaceful everything felt, how real it all was. At one point, a little girl ran past them, tripping over her shoelaces. Cole immediately knelt to tie them for her, offering a gentle smile as she hurried off again. Lena watched the entire moment with soft eyes. This man, this humble mechanic, was raised on decency, patience, and kindness. And suddenly, all the wealth in her world felt painfully empty in comparison. As they returned to the garage, the warm Carolina sunlight casting gold across the gravel, Lena stopped walking. "Cole," she said softly. He turned. "Yeah, I want to tell you something." She exhaled. "My father expected you to take the offer for the date. He thought the challenge would impress you or scare you into saying yes." Cole shook his head with a small laugh. "Yeah, I figured he wasn't used to hearing the word no, not from anyone," she admitted, "but he was convinced you'd want the reward." Cole stepped closer, his voice soft but steady. "Lena, I wasn't rejecting you. I just didn't want anything in my life, not even a moment with you, to be someone else's prize." Her eyes sparkled, part surprise, part emotion. "So, what am I now?" He nodded toward her heart. "Someone I want to know." Because of who she is, her breath hitched. Without thinking, she reached out, lightly brushing a fleck of grease from his cheek. Her fingers lingered for just a moment, long enough for both of them to feel the spark. Neither could deny any more. A gentle breeze swept across the lot. Cars passed by. A dog barked in the distance. Life continued as normal, but inside Lena, something shifted. Something healed. Something opened. "I'm glad I came," she whispered. "Me too," Cole replied. They stood there, close enough to feel each other's warmth, but not touching, like two people slowly realizing they were standing at the beginning of something real, something fragile, something worth protecting. As the golden sunlight settled over the small-town garage, Lena realized something that stopped her heart. The mechanic who fixed her father's legendary Camaro had also fixed something inside her. Not through power. Not through charm. Not through a challenge. Not through a reward, but through respect. Through humility. Through heart. And as Cole locked up the garage and offered her a quiet, nervous smile, asking if she wanted to come back tomorrow for more coffee and conversation, didn't hesitate for a single second. "Yes," she said. Simply. Softly. Sincerely. The real win wasn't the Camaro. It was finding someone who saw her, not the money, not the name, not the empire, but the woman underneath it all. And as they walked off together into the warm Carolina evening, Lena knew this story, this connection, this beginning, was worth more than any challenge her father could ever design.